And go ahead, Amy. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Sydney. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Cradle-to-Career Governing Board meeting this morning. So welcome to the Cradle-to-Career Governing Board members, the Cradle-to-Career office team, and members of the public. Next slide. So our agenda today includes a number of informational items, including the Cradle-to-Career office updates, advisory board updates. There's a report out on the student experience audit, branding report out. We'll also hear about the executive director review, an item on collecting and sharing governing board member demographic information, documenting the P20W data system data points, and affirm the work of the governance manual ad hoc committee. Generally speaking, in today's meeting, we will be inviting public comment at multiple specific points throughout the meeting. Our process has usually been to present an agenda item, and the board will have a discussion, and then we invite the public to comment. If we have an item that is up for vote, I will then invite a motion, a second, and then we'll take a roll call vote. So at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our Executive Director, Marianne Bates, for some updates.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's wonderful to see all of you here. Welcome to our board meeting. What I'll be doing for the next couple of minutes is to give you an update on some of the work that we've accomplished since we last came together in August. And if you can go to the next slide. As a quick reminder, the 12-month work plan that you reviewed and approved at our August meeting is available on the public part of our website under resources. So both the 12-month work plan and the 5-year projected timeline that we discussed at the last meeting is available there if you'd like to share that with anyone. So I'll now walk through a couple of highlights of the work that we've done on that front. So as you know, the Cradle-to-Career team is small in terms of staff, and a lot of the work that we're going to do will be done via contracts and working with our partners. So I just wanted to highlight a couple of the procurements, contracts, interagency agreements that we've entered into. I'll just flag the first one here. We have a contract with a governance consultant who's going to support us in supporting you and in supporting our advisory boards, including for the board's updates to strategic planning and things like that. So wanted to make you aware of that resource. We're just getting them on board, and we'll be giving you more details about this in the future. And then you can see there's a variety of other procurements and contracts that we've entered into to be able to do our work, get started in building the data system and doing our work well. On the next slide, I'd also like to highlight a couple of the currently open procurements, requests for offer. So you can see many of these are related to the system integrator and the actual build of our cloud-based data warehouse for linking the data together from our data partners. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you an update on where we are in the process for the system integrator RFP as well. So we talked about this in August, and as a reminder, that procurement is going through the Department of Technology's project approval lifecycle. It's called the PAL process. And this is an extensive and detailed process that the state has created to ensure that technology projects are set up well. And I am happy to announce that we're nearing the completion of stage 4. So PAL stage 4, I can announce that as of yesterday, has been routed for executive signatures. So we look forward to completing that process soon. As I mentioned, PAL is a long and detailed process. We're very grateful that we've been able to move through this process as expeditiously as we have, and much gratitude to our colleagues at CDT for that. And this is relevant, and I wanted to highlight where we are on this because this is a key dependency that a lot of the things in our 12-month work plan depend on. So this will enable us to begin the work of building the data warehouse for our work. So I'm delighted to share the update that the stage 4 documents have been routed for executive signature, and we're looking forward to being able to share more about that publicly soon. I think I saw a hand, but it disappeared again. So I'll wait until the end of this for questions and comments. I also wanted to highlight, many thanks to our data providers whose teams have been starting conversations with our data infrastructure team in particular to prepare for initial data transfers of the P20W data points. And as I mentioned, our team has begun meetings with the data provider staff for initial conversations about roles and responsibilities, timeline, and feasibility. And what we're focusing on now and next, and which is in progress, is the work of mapping specific data points from the source systems to the C2C P20W data set. So doing as much of the background work as we can to prepare for that. I'm also happy to share that the security task force that we had discussed at prior meetings, we convened it recently for the first time. The participants, as a reminder, this includes the chief information security officers or similar from our data providers who will be sharing data with C2C in the first phase. And the purpose of this task force is to advise C2C about security matters relevant both to the data system and the greater organization. So this is intimately related with the prior slide. As we discussed at our last meeting, we are going to work with our data providers and work with them until everyone is comfortable with our security protocols and all that is in place. And that will then be followed by the first data transfers to our data system. All right, staffing update. I'm happy to report that we have now hired our 4th director. So our 4 director positions are now filled, and would like to welcome Leslie Taylor to the team. She's our new director of operations and just joined the team last week. And Leslie, I'd like to welcome you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, good morning. It's such a pleasure for me to be here today as the very newest member of the C2C team. Day 8 am I on? In my role as Director of Operations, I'll be focused on the people that will bring the data system to life. So I'll be working on talent management, policies and procedures, and of course, securing the resources that we need to do this critical work. Just a little bit about me. I've worked in the education sector for nearly 20 years, including the last 10 years at the California Department of Education. And I'm most excited to be part of building the most inclusive data system in the country. That's like a dream come true, to be able to work expressly on advancing educational equity through data transparency. And from my perspective, to have that human-centered approach and a process improvement lens to support all of our team members. So thank you so much for the warm welcome.
Thank you, Leslie, and welcome to the team. So as I mentioned, with Leslie now having joined the team, our 4 verticals each have a director. So we have our director of operations, we have Shannon, our director of engagement, Dan, our director of data infrastructure, and Ryan, our director of data programs. So I'm thrilled to have our leadership team in place, and we'll be looking forward to supporting them as they build and grow their teams in the coming year. So next, I wanted to flag a couple of currently open positions. Thank you for continuing to share our job postings. You as board members sharing these with your networks has been a key way that we have been able to recruit thus far. So please continue doing that. And to members of the public who are joining us today, please feel free to share these positions as well or apply if it's a good fit for you. So the first 2 positions here, Principal Data Architect and Senior Data Engineer, those are both on Dan Lamry's team and the Data Infrastructure team and will be crucial roles for building out the data system. So please, highlight those. And then another position we currently have open is our General Counsel position. We're advertising for a new General Counsel as Ron Marriott, who has served for the past year, has taken a position with CDT. So I just wanted to flag that this is a crucial role for us and would appreciate your sharing the job postings as well. These are all linked from our careers page on our website. I also just wanted to give you an update. You may ask, especially with Ron having moved to CDT, how are we currently being supported for legal counsel? So CDT has graciously agreed that Ron can continue to support our work part-time for the next 3 months or so while we recruit a replacement. And we also have support from GovOps. So GovOps General Counsel, who is also involved in the planning process, Gabriel Ravel, who some of you may know. So we have that support. And I just wanted to flag this because this is a great example of how GovOps has been very helpful to us as we get started, and how collaborations across departments and agencies within the state can really support our work. We're very aware that we have a small team, so we need to plan for staff transitions, and we're working to ensure that we have backup both within the team in terms of cross-training and across different state entities to make sure that we have the ability to have people who can step in when there's a gap. So I wanted to give you that update. Budget update. So as you'll recall, in August, you reviewed a budget change concept. So let me give an update on where we are with that process. We submitted a formal budget change proposal to the Department of Finance based on that budget change concept that you reviewed and the feedback that you shared at our August board meeting. And many thanks to our board chairs who served as liaisons to the staff on this process. That is now going through the detailed Department of Finance review process. And the next public update we will all see is the governor's proposed budget on January 10th, when the administration releases their proposed plan for the next year. I wanted to highlight a couple of press and community engagement activities that we've been involved in since the last board meeting. So in the first bullet point, you can see our community conversations. These are the repeating events that we have where we just have an open meeting with the public where we can share information, they can ask questions. So we're continuing that series. I also wanted to highlight that our partners at CCGI, who run californiacolleges.edu, have been doing quite a tour across the state. So they have done over 57 in-person presentations at college counselor events across 28 counties, as well as 6 statewide virtual presentations with CSAC. So really working to meet people where they're at across the state to help them understand about how the free resources that the state is invested in with californiacolleges.edu is available. So Jen presented at the State Higher Education Executive Officers Association. We did a webinar with TCAS, Ed Trust West's Equity Forum. I spoke with a panel at the National Academies, and one of our advisory board members, Svete Viveras-Walton, gave a presentation as well. So just wanted to highlight these. If you are going to be speaking about Cradle to Career, please let us know. We have a process for this sketched out in our governance manual, and we're here to support you. So Shannon has been developing slide decks and talking points that you can use so that it's easy for you. And we can also help amplify your event in advance as well. And if something's missing from this list, please let us know. We would love to be able to highlight the work that you're doing to be ambassadors for this data system. So thank you for that. 2023 meeting dates. So this, I wanted to just touch base about this. And if you have any thoughts or concerns about the meeting schedule as we've had it this past year, please reach out to Sydney and myself. So this past year, we had a cadence for quarterly meetings of meeting in February, May, August, and November. Especially the August and November meetings, the timing worked well in August in advance of, it was kind of at the right moment for the budget cycle and before the legislative report was due. Our meeting now in early November avoids kind of the holidays and when people tend to be out of the office towards the end of the year. And from the survey you filled out before, it seems like Wednesdays are the easiest day of the week. So we have the option to just replicate that next year. I think that would be our default, unless we hear otherwise from you, is to keep this cadence of meeting in those months and trying to meet on Wednesdays. And then I wanted to flag that would make our next board meeting February 8th of next year. And we, our default would be to hold that meeting in person. I think we talked about this briefly at our August meeting, that we now have the ability to hold our meetings virtually. But having them in person once in a while, as well as in particular, if there's a planned closed session, the logistics of supporting a closed session in the middle of that's sandwiched in the middle of a public meeting is logistically a bit simpler with in-person. So that would be our default plan for February when we have the scheduled executive director review session. So again, if you have any thoughts on that, please feel free to share or let Sydney and I know, but this would be the default plan for moving forward next year. So with that, if you have any comments or questions, I definitely welcome them.
Thank you, Marianne. And I'm not seeing questions or comments from our board members today. All right, next up on our agenda is Sydney.
Sorry, I did just see a hand.
Oh, did we see one? Oh, I'm sorry. Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, not a lot. That was an excellent report. And Marianne, I just wanted to note, like, you're still relatively new in this role, considering the scope of your role. And I'm just really appreciate the way you hit the ground running, the details that you provide us. So I just wanted to say good job. No hard-hitting questions.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll pause a little bit longer in case there are other questions. All right. Sydney.
Yes, thank you so much, Amy. So good morning, governing board members. So as you know, I'm Sydney Armendariz, the Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships here at C2C. I'm here to give you an overview and an update about the advisory board meetings that kicked off in September. So next slide, please. So our initial advisory board meetings happened in late September. So the first one was community engagement that happened on September 21st. Then the next day, it was data and tools, and that was on the 22nd. So during those initial board meetings, we pretty much shared an overview of the C2C data system. And then we also completed a team building activity where board members shared why they're excited about the C2C data system. So we heard a lot about this is a great opportunity for collaboration. We heard a lot about equity and advancing equity using data, and then just having tools that are available to students and families to help ease the transition into higher education. So it was great to see a lot of positive energy. Our advisory board members are very enthusiastic about the work that's to come. So the two first meetings were awesome, and everyone seemed like they are really passionate about this work. So next slide, please. So then the second round of meetings happened just last week. It's been a crazy set of 2 weeks. So I think it was last week where we had both advisory boards meet again. So both of those meetings had a similar agenda in the beginning. So we had a representative from the Department of Justice give a presentation on the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. So that was really informative to just share what the Open Meeting Act is, how it relates to their roles as advisory board members, and how meetings are conducted under Bagley-Keene. Then they formed an advisory board governance ad hoc committee, which will develop recommendations on advisory board governance for the governing board's governance manual ad hoc committee to review. So again, we had a few enthusiastic folks who were willing to devote even more of their time to helping develop recommendations for the advisory board governance processes. Then we talked about feasibility study options, where Brian Estriado, our Director of Data Programs, described the foundational process of how recommendations will move from the advisory boards to the governing board. My apologies, I gave that presentation, but Ryan definitely helped. As I told you, it's been a rough 2 weeks with these meetings, but yes, I gave that presentation with Ryan's help to just share what our thoughts are about how we can move recommendations from the boards into your hands for considerations. And as Marianne mentioned in her update, the governance consultant that we have on board will be instrumental into creating those processes as well. So more to come as we flesh those out. Next slide, please. So next, we have two really special guests. We have two board members from the Community Engagement Advisory Board and our Data and Tools Advisory Board to help talk about the other agenda items that were discussed during those two meetings. So first, I'll introduce Paige Leverin. She's a member of our Community Engagement Advisory Board, and she'll give an overview of the discussions from that advisory board meeting last week. So Paige, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Sydney. And Sydney, you've been doing a fabulous job, and all the support you've given us. I can't tell you how much I actually appreciate it and appreciate you. You're doing a fabulous job. So good morning, governing board members. I'm Paige Leverin, and I'm district counselor from Visalia Unified School District. I'm going to give an overview of what Community Engagement Advisory Board discussed during our last week meeting. We received a Cradle-to-Career branding and offered feedback on the Cradle-to-Career logo and the official Cradle-to-Career name and tagline. We also heard plans for community guidelines and the C2C input toolkit. The community guidelines will develop a shared understanding of how we communicate ideas, solicit feedback, and incorporate input. We also discussed the user-centered design process. We learned about the steps in the user-centered design and shared ideas about community members who should be represented in the design process. We also heard plans about the messaging californiacolleges.edu and shared feedback on how to best communicate about their platform. Next, we learned about the student experience audit, including its purpose, the legislative requirement, and the process. We also discussed a key finding from the student experience audit as an example of what we can expect from the audit. I appreciate your time. I look forward to serving as a member of the Community Engagement Advisory Board. And again, Sydney, thank you for everything.
Thank you so much, Paige. I really appreciate the compliment, and thank you so much for being willing to share the update from the Community Engagement Advisory Board.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So next slide, I think maybe advance one more. Yes. So next up, we have Lisa Chavez from our Data and Tools Advisory Board to give you an overview of last week's Data and Tools Advisory Board meeting. So Lisa, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And yes, I echo Paige's compliments and gratitude to you, Sydney, for telling us where we need to be, when we need to be, and just really providing great guidance. I have a particular appreciation for your skill set, Sydney, because I actually run a big commission here at the State Bar of California, where I'm Director of Institutional Research and Accountability. So I totally see gold when I know gold when I see it. So thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm super excited to share an overview of the Data and Tools Advisory Board meeting on October 27th. First, we heard well, first I just want to say we did hear the presentation by Bagley King, and I just want to say that it was an excellent presentation. Again, I run a commission here at the State Bar of California, and I may steal that PowerPoint presentation, and so we can use it for our various committees here at the State Bar. It was incredibly formative, and the person did a really great job of taking us down into really like what constitutes a meeting, et cetera. So they're very informative. But next, I just want to share that we heard an update from Shannon on the community guidelines and the C2C community toolkit. Next, we got into data definition. It felt like Christmas morning, quite frankly, when we received a PDF that had all the great work that was done in these previous working groups that described all the data definitions that have already been identified, and that's going to constitute this amazing P20W data set. During that session, we heard from Ryan about the process by which the CTC is going to integrate data from its various partners. And then next, we turn to overview kind of kickoff session on how we would, think about the teacher and employment data, and particularly the type of feedback and research questions that we would give to Ryan and his team as they develop the dashboards. Again, when you bring a bunch of researchers together who are passionate about data, tools, et cetera, it was a really fabulous conversation. Again, initial conversation about, really like looking at this data set, looking at the different data elements, think about the research questions that have already been done, and think about what other research questions that we can come up with that will guide the development of those dashboards. And so that's pretty much the constitution of this really great meeting. And I just thank you for the opportunity to serve in this incredible commission, this board and this organization.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing that update. And thank you again for the kind words. I really appreciate it. Y'all are making me blush this morning. Thank you. So we'll open it up to public comment. So if any members of the public would like to submit public comment on the advisory board update, please use the Q&A function in Zoom to indicate your interest. We will unmute you when it is your turn. And please keep in mind that you will have 2 minutes to comment. And please note that while we intend to promote transparency and open communication with our public stakeholders, please keep in mind that C2C board members and staff are not legally required to respond to public comment. So while we love to hear your feedback, please just keep that in mind, that we may not respond to everyone. So go ahead and please indicate your interest in Q&A. And while we wait to see if we have any public comment, I'll open it up to board members if any of you have any questions or comments. Or more compliments, I'll take those as well.
You're awesome, Sydney.
Thank you. And yes, Tom, I saw your note in the chat. It is technically holiday season. Yes, Mariah Carey has thought out. We are good to go on celebrating the holidays. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, I'm not seeing any interest, any requests for public comment, so we'll go ahead and continue moving forward on the agenda. So I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you, Sydney. I certainly second everything that's been said. You definitely help keep us all in line with what's coming up next and what we're supposed to do now, and then just recapping for us, you know, what we could do to make the next time better. So I really appreciate all of that. Our next item on the agenda comes from Ryan Estrellado.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ryan Estrellado. I'm the Director of Data Programs, and I want to thank you for the chance to be able to share today about the Student Experience Audit, one of our important deliverables. It's raining here in San Diego, so I apologize if you hear rain in the background, though I'm thinking maybe that'll feel like a calming background. I don't know. I hope that the weather is nice where you are at. Okay, so Shannon, the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Student Experience Audit, and I want, as I review what we've done and what's next for us in the future for the Student Experience Audit, I want to invite you to join us in imagining how this process will be a growing body of evidence that can directly inform how we develop our data products. So excited about this first step, and also it is just the first step, and so we're really looking forward to to building on this. Mary Ann said something at one of the advisory board meetings that really stuck with me. She said that we're seeing a sentence from the statute become something in real life. And I think we'll be seeing a lot of that in our work. This is just one example. But to bring us all onto the same page about what the statute requires, we have the language here on this slide. And so I'll just read out the part that directly addresses the Student Experience Audit, which is the definitions: conducting an annual student experience audit related to navigating the transition from secondary education to higher education. And so that's what we've got to go off of. And we're using our creativity to come up with the best ways that we can to use this process to uncover stories that we don't often hear. So let's dig into what this looked like and what's coming up next. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you see in front of you is a summary of the methodology. This is an annual process, so we do it once a year. For this first round, we had a shorter timeline than we will have for future rounds. Next one's coming in spring. And so for the shorter timeline, we asked WestEd to do a preliminary round this year. We focused on interviewing frontline educators, so folks in community advocates, so folks who are working with students who are beginning to plan life after high school, with the idea that what we want to do over and over again in this process is give voice to the stories about the barriers that get in the way of that planning process and what the pain points are. So we got some advice from advisory board members about who in their network we should be talking about that can reveal to us the stories that are hard for us to get to, very often the ones that go unheard. Over a 30-day period, WestEd interviewed 11 members of the community, including community college staff, high school counselors, community advocates, community-based organizations, gathered up the interview data, and then surfaced stories that fed our preliminary themes. And so those themes that came up based on real life stories of the folks who are actually living this are three that we've surfaced. The first is how special family circumstances influence the college application experience. And in particular, students and families who are undocumented, students who are in foster care, and students who are homeless. So the extent to which the system, as it is set up right now, throws out a lot more pain points for families who are in those special circumstances, raises a lot of questions and stories that we need to learn from. The second is the extent to which families trust in institutions. And then the third is awareness of the post-application requirements. So once the application is in, what are the next steps? How clear can we make that in stories that show us the extent to which those ideas are often not clear? And so all of that data is collated, analyzed. There's one more step in this first round that we are going to complete, and it has to do with empowering the public and members of the board to learn what we have learned from this and share the findings with others. And so to that end, WestEd is putting together a product that summarizes the findings of the study. From a tactical standpoint, we will be using that summary to build on our next round, which is going to be due in spring, where we'll be focusing on interviewing more folks from the community, but students in particular, and continue to grow this body of evidence so that as we build the data tools, we can use it to inform our process. Okay, so that's what I've got for the student experience audit, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sydney for public comment.
Great, thank you so much, Ryan. So again, at this time, we will open it up for public comment on this agenda item regarding the student experience audit report out. Please indicate your interest to submit public comment via the Q&A function on Zoom, and then you will have 2 minutes to comment. So while we are waiting for public comment, we will open it up to our board members. I do see Debbie Cochran's hand up, so go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the report out, and I had not focused on the student experience audit, so this is exciting. I'm wondering if what you all are thinking in terms of trying to reach former students, basically people who have already reached their career goals or not quite reached their career goals, but whether, if we're looking at a kind of a worker population and reaching out to employers, we can find people who have either navigated through that transition into post-secondary education, and we can learn a lot from their experience, or we'll find some people who haven't. And I think we'd probably learn a lot from that as well. So just curious to hear what your thoughts are about outreach to employers or other former students.
Thanks for that, Debbie. Yeah, really good point. I think any member who is directly connected or indirectly connected to what this process is like for young people is going to offer something valuable. And sort of the whole idea of this is to uncover stuff that doesn't sort of naturally come up to us in their current system of developing products. As a plus one to your suggestion, there was some conversation about having interviewing some folks who have not only, so we've got this group of people who are going through the process, we've got a group of people who are about to go through the process, but then the people who have just finished it have it most fresh in their mind about what that was like. So I think that would be a really great source of data, and I thank you for raising it.
Any other board members? Christopher Dwelly, I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you for that update on the student experience audit, Ryan. I also had not been familiar with a lot of the details of it. My question is this audit focused primarily on the transition to community college, the two-year colleges, or is it also including four-year colleges as well?
Yeah, so good question. It is focused on the experience of students who are going from high school to life after high school. And so there is a focus right now on financial aid and college applications. So that would encompass all of the institutions that you talked about. But I do want to note too, one of the things that we value about this process is it can be used to expand on other areas of research as these stories sort of lead us to more ways that we can help the public. The statute requires, one part of it, and we are focusing on those two things right now, but the tools are broadly applicable. So, as conversations lead us there, totally open to hearing suggestions.
Okay. On your list of interviewees, I was wondering if you would also be interviewing counselors, staff, administrators from four-year colleges.
The answer is yes. And also,
Okay.
let's be in touch after this, and maybe we can get some recommendations from you about like who should be in touch with.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Jerry Winkler, I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the update and the information. I was just curious how the CCGI tools were involved in this audit, and if you were looking at those specifically, or if this is more of a general overview.
Yeah, really good question. So we intentionally, because we wanted to recall that a primary design sort of element of the student experience audit is to surface stories that don't often come up in the natural process of researching. And so to that end, we were very intentional in trying to find folks who are working with students who are actively involved in the CCGI related tools, but we also wanted to hear from folks who are not, and get stories from both sides of that conversation.
And Tom Vu, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Ryan. I just wanted to echo Chris's comments. I think it'll be critical to look at the full scope of higher education options when looking for, when discussing these interviews, and also, the important to, bring in the voices of the counselors, articulation officers, et cetera, that work at the 4 years. Please do include the independent nonprofits in that discussion as well, not just the UCs.
Thank you for saying that. Noted.
Thank you. And Sylvia Alva.
So thank you for this very helpful presentation. This is a new concept for me as well. Can you speak a little bit about the methodology? Is this largely qualitative informant interviews, or do you see the adoption of a systematic culture or some kind of tool that's administered on a regular ongoing basis to a target group of students?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sylvia. Thank you for asking it. For this first round, we had a shorter timeline, so to be strategic about how we can get the best information that we can with the folks who could be more immediately available to us. And so we focused on empathy interviews as the primary tool. But we are exploring ways to expand the data collection, including continuing with empathy interviews, but also including things that can yield more quantitative data like surveys. And I think certainly if there are tools that could be available to us that you think would help, be open to hearing those. And the method is not set. It's an evolving process as the evidence shows up and sort of forces us to reconsider how to best get the stories that we don't often hear. I think we have to look at different tools that are going to work. So very open to suggestions there.
And Catalina Cifuentes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ryan, for this. I have tons of questions, but I'll just ask one. When I think of this, I see, there's so much data, and it's just amazing. The stories are so powerful because what we're finding, and since 2020, that there's always the academic preparation that prevented them. It's other outside factors that prevented them from post-secondary. So when I hear Debbie's comment, how do we go back? It's so important. Like class of 2020, we have so many students in that class in 2021 that met the requirements for the UC system, did their financial aid application, did everything they were supposed to, and they did not enroll in post-secondary. And I can see that through National Student Clearinghouse. So I just think there's a wealth of different types of groups within like the California colleges, whether they utilize the platform, but because you have that data, all that data there. So if you were to tell me, Catalina, we want to survey in Riverside County, because I have over 200,000 students on the platform, students that were below 2.5, that didn't apply, or maybe only applied to one community college, I can give you that, like literally and the contact and the students, like, so there's just so much there within those pieces to correlate. So just how we, not to forget different ways to go after those students, but I think they're not that far. They're in class of 2020, they're in class of 2021. And their stories, what we're finding as we do empathy interviews, it's definitely not necessarily academic preparation or rigor. It's been other factors that have prevented them. So just thank you for this. And I think that would just love to just echo that there are other alternatives as well that they're looking to apply to, and other pathways. And what we're finding, it's the conversations around college only. We really have to embed that career piece too. So how, like, I can't just say, go to college so you can wear a shirt. And mind you, I'm with students, pretty much almost every day, students and families where I work. I need to connect it to real life. So however we can correlate that to the career piece, the CT pathways, those conversations, and bring those two together. Anywhere I can help as well on that end. But I just think that's kind of been like the motivation, and when we show students the career piece as well as the college post-secondary piece. So just thank you, Ryan. This is awesome. Looking forward to more.
You're welcome, and thank you for sharing that. We're with you on that idea. So looking forward to talking more about that.
Thank you. And Sujin Jez.
Thank you. I feel like Catalina is the perfect segue. I was going to ask about some of the longer term planning for the student experience audit. Where do you see sort of the next round and the next however many years, what sort of information you're hoping to get to inform the development? And then thinking to Catalina's point around most of Californians who, when we think about Cradle-to-Career and getting into education, are no longer connected to, a direct service provider or K-12 or whatever else. So I think being really intentional in reaching all of this, or I would say student experience, it's they're not students anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
How do we get information from them around how do they find out about this resource and how do they use it? How do we get in front of them? And thinking about the 15 data providers, I imagine that they are accessing some sort of service from the state. So thinking about whether it's a local workforce development board, if it's CalWorks, CalFresh, whatever it is, how do we reach those older Californians and sort of give them that pathway to, education and a better job?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question, because it's something that Catalina said really has me thinking about this, which is how can we use everybody's expertise and their knowledge of their data set to help us reach folks who, if we have a specific audience that we feel like, boy, they haven't had a chance to really come to the table and share their story. I think to Catalina's point, we have these bodies of data, and y'all who are the experts to interpret it can sort of lead us towards those populations. I think that's something that we should be thinking about in the future. Looking a little further down the line, one of the things that I'm most excited about is once we accumulate enough data from this process, on one hand, it'll help us mature just our kind of general thinking about who our population is and who our community, but on a more tactical level too, those insights serve as the design principles to develop and test our data products. So to answer your question, one thing that we can use this for can also be, hey, we have data products we've now developed that we are meant for particular audiences, and we want to put these in front of you, see how you react to it, and learn about what that experience is like, learn how we can make them better, and learn where the pain points are. That's a little further down the line, but I think it's one of a few different ways that we can use the growing body of evidence that comes from this process. Did I answer your question? Okay.
And I just want to highlight some comments in the chat from board members. And Javier, I do see your hand. So Meredith Lee gave a +1 to Catalina's comment. Tom Vu gave a +1 to Sujin's comments about adult learners. Debbie Cochran gave a +1 to the last few comments. As the student experience audit gets built out, we need to be very intentional about capturing the diversity of student experiences and paths, including understanding where the paths were not linear or even successful. So I just wanted to highlight those few comments in the chat from board members. And Javier, go ahead.
I just wanted to echo Sujin and Catalina. I mean, there's organizations out there such as the Workforce World, CBOs, that are targeting individuals that are disadvantaged and are trying to find ways back into education or some pathway into workforce. So considering organizations and systems that are very focused on those that are being left behind, I think is very important to this process.
Thank you for sharing that. Totally agree. But another aha moment for us is like I think, or that I'm having right now is in the planning process, we've got all of your expertise and resources and databases and experiences, not only to share about the way things are going, but to actually get us to the people that we need to be hearing from. That's what I'm hearing loud and clear. And yes, 3 times. Thank you.
And just wanted to highlight Sujin's comment in the chat. In our research, we found 5 million Californians intend to go to college in the next 2 years. How are they getting info to find the best match for their needs and goals? It would be amazing if C2C could serve their needs too. And of course, happy to chat more about this. And she also put a link to California Competes in the chat. And then Gavin Payne gave her a +1. So Christopher Dwelly, I see your hand.
Yeah, just mostly want to echo the importance on focusing on adult learners and addressing the transition into the workforce and career paths and all the different public and community-based providers that both Sujin and Javier mentioned would be important to include in the study. But I would also suggest thinking about employers themselves that may also be partners in providing a lot of the training for the transition into the workforce and the upskilling that is involved with that. So some way to sort of address how employers themselves might be playing an important role in that.
Thank you. That's noted, and that's super useful.
Okay, and we did not receive any requests for public comment. So last call, Javier said, great point, Chris, in the chat. So last call for any questions or comments from board members, and last call for public comment. Oh, Sujin, I see your hand.
I agree around the employer piece, and I will drop in the chat a link to a study we did around higher ed and employer engagement that might be useful in trying to navigate this, because it's tough.
Thank you for that. And by the way, I am spamming the save chat button over and over again to make sure that I have all of this valuable information, because it's really, I'm feeling excited about exploring these.
And just to highlight 2 more board members in the chat, Sylvia Alva wrote, this seems like a very broad and ambitious goal. Segmenting the work and target population may be a good idea. Marisol Lavinia said, +1 on Debbie's point on diversity of experiences and path. Appreciate the call out of undocumented foster youth, first gen, and might add English language learners. Sujin did post the link to the brief on higher ed and employer engagement. And let's see, that is it. And we don't have any requests for public comment. So with that, I will, unless Ryan, did you have any final words to close this out?
Only thank you for all of your input as we get ready for another round of this in the spring. And I'm excited to do it based on everything that y'all have shared. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the diverse set of comments, really calling out to all of the different groups that we're trying to serve with this new data system. Our next agenda item, it comes from Sharon Serrato, so I'll turn it over to Shannon.
Good morning, everyone. It's so nice to be with you all virtually today, so very excited to be with the governing board. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Shannon Serrato. I'm the Director of Engagement here, and I'm just excited to give some updates about our branding. As you may know, in the 5-year timeline, I've been charged with creating a cohesive and vibrant brand that reflects the vision and mission of Cradle-to-Career's data system, and we've made some good progress. So I want to give some salient updates for you all today. But before I jump in, I want to make sure that I give a shout out to your fellow board member, Meredith Lee, who so graciously agreed to be C2C's board design liaison. And she will work with me on behalf of the board to kind of iterate on designs and options as we work through the branding. And so very glad to have her. design eye and keen advice. It's been so helpful so far. Again, I'm always going to bring major decisions to the full board before we jump in and make any real concrete choices. But this is just a way to make sure that we have a board member present and involved in the process, so that we can bring our ideas, make sure that they're ready for prime time for you all. So again, thank you, Meredith. So in the past 2 months or so, we've made significant progress towards streamlining a vision for the brand. We've updated our basic branding foundation. We revamped existing components of the C2C's identity, such as our color palette and font family, which you'll see reflected through slides today in the meeting deck for a unified look. And we're now working to create an official C2C logo. So for today's meeting, I've included an overview of all of the current logos in the onboard decks. You'll see a PDF for that there. And you can also see just a general sense of the 4 options on your screen. And then I've also linked to a survey in onboard as well to get your thoughts and feedback on our choices. So we want to convey that the Cradle-to-Career's data systems value and beliefs visually, and we have 4 viable options on your screen. The logos reflect key messages that we want to send. We want to show growth and action. The design should show that we are data-driven, and that while we are serious, the brand is inviting and approachable. And because we're building a P20W system, it's important to focus not only on the overarching goal of school. We want to make sure that everybody's included from cradle through the workforce. So you'll see some of that reflected, especially in options A and B. And we also want to focus specifically on California. We are a California entity, so you'll see the California poppies reflected and data points reflected through all of these in options C and D. So again, I have included a link to a survey for your thoughts, and this is a more open-ended survey than we provided for other folks. We also presented these options not only to Meredith, but also to our advisory boards, and we did a preliminary survey to staff. So it's gone through a couple of revisions before reaching you all today, but I wanted to make sure that I had some open-ended questions in there as well. So we want to make sure that the logos reflect our vision and mission. Also want to make sure that it's memorable, that it's unique, that it's something that we all want to see on the website going forward. And so I have some kind of ranking options and suggestions there, but I also have some open-ended questions for you all. If there's things that you want to highlight specifically, items that you want to change, for example, colors, or I've seen this before somewhere, this looks kind of like that. This is the opportunity to provide that input, because we are going to iterate on that feedback and then come up with some real concrete final decisions to present to the public. The goal is to have a new logo sometime by the end of November, December. It's November now. So that's the goal for the logo. So again, I really appreciate your thoughts and feedback there. I just want to highlight again that there are a couple of surveys in onboard for you. And again, you can also annotate the PDF if you would like, send me some notes. I will drop my email in the chat, shannon.serrato at c2c.ca.gov. I am sharing my screen, so it's a little beyond my technology now, but I'll make sure to have that information in the chat so you all can get that information out to me. But I just really appreciate your thoughts and attention there. Another concrete piece of branding that we're working on is the C2C name itself. Cradle-to-Career's data system was named in state legislation to be California's source of actionable data and research on education, economic and health outcomes for individuals, families, and the community. And we've been called many different names thus far, from the Office of Cradle-to-Career Data to California's Cradle-to-Career Data System to Cradle-to-Career Data, to name a few. But we want to make sure our name truly reflects the state's landmark investment and goal of helping Californians build more equitable futures and empower individuals to reach their full potential. We want a name that reflects not only the mission of the system, but the aspirations that come with it. We presented this issue to members of the public during our September community conversation, and we asked people on the call which terms resonated with them when thinking about C2C. And we also asked which terms in return did not spark joy. So over 75 members of the call said terms like data, system, and information really resonated with them when thinking about Cradle-to-Career, and terms like ecosystem and hub were not something that they really liked. So we're trying to make sure that we are incorporating pieces of that feedback into the full name, as well as a tagline that can be accompanying to better spell out what we do here. Another key point of consideration is that there are many Cradle-to-Career systems, not only in the state doing great work, but all across the country. So it's important to distinguish ourselves from the overarching data system and not a direct service organization. We've heard from advisory board members last week that there's some clarity provided when using terms like data and system. And so we're taking that to heart as we think about just how we want to communicate what we're doing here. We also want to create a feeling of positivity, inclusivity, and belonging that can be achieved with using as an initiative. And so we have some more uplifting sources of taglines. So we heard things like a holistic student journey and career, college, and guidance for students of all ages. Those really resonated with folks when thinking about the taglines. And when thinking about the linked data system, using terms like connectivity really resonated with them. So a connective data system, early child through the workforce really rang true for them. So again, I've included a survey for you all to kind of think about which terms, which names really resonate with you when you think about Cradle to Career. And it also opened up for open-ended discussion. So again, if there's things that you really want to see or things that really just don't make sense to you, please use that opportunity to include that there. Again, you can share it with Onboard, share it in Onboard, send me a chat, send a chat right now if you want. I'm sure there's time to discuss these things in real time if you have immediate thoughts. But kind of wanted to make sure that you all heard where we've been going. We've had these conversations with a lot of folks now, but you are our governing board and want to make sure that your voices are heard. So we've been trying to hear, from folks what really matters to them, but make sure that you all are centered when we think about the final vote feedback as we think about our name. So I appreciate your time and attention there. So those are the real concrete pieces of branding, the name and the logo that I wanted to bring to your attention today. But beyond that, we've been making a lot of progress here, just beyond streamlining our work. So things that you've seen today, there is a link to C2C's resources page that we've created. So just having a central place where folks can get the information that they need, our planning documents, infographics, all of the things that we're hoping to build out that will live there. So we've done that. We're also focusing on streamlining our communication strategies. So we've built out a newsroom now that houses our new C2C newsletter. We created a blog which will recap meetings like this so that folks don't have to watch a 3-hour meeting. But we want to make sure that there is a transparency element that runs through everything that we do. So making sure that folks know exactly where we are in the process is always a key goal for Cradle to Career. And so making sure that we have those tangible pieces of information available is something that we're really hoping to do. And then finally, I just wanted to flag that as we build out our collateral, and I've heard this on the call today, we're really thinking about the ways that we want to segment this information to folks to make sure that we're meeting them where they are. So making sure that we have information that's very clear for educators, clear for researchers, clear for analysts, as well as students and families as we're building that out. We'll be sending them relevant newsletters, relevant information tailored to them as time goes on so they know that this is the information that they need. If you are thinking about the data system and you're really into analysis, or if there's a new tool, CCGI has this thing, we want to make sure that we have a demo for students and families that they understand. We're really trying to target that information and really meet people where they are. So I wanted to highlight those pieces. And I also want to encourage you again to sign up for the C2C newsletter, all of the things. You have done an amazing job in promoting all of our work. We are really active on social media these days, and I know you all are too. So I just wanted to take this time to thank you for that. There's a lot of retweets, a lot of shares as time goes on. And so I just really appreciate y'all getting the word out. And again, if there's opportunities to reach other communities or reach other groups as director of engagement, I want to make sure that we are reaching everybody that we need to hear from. We are serving large swaths of populations here. So making sure that all of our information is relevant and culturally competent. All of your feedback will be so crucial as we do all of those things. So it's a work in progress, but it's in progress. And I'm really excited about it. But I also want to use this opportunity to kind of stop and take a beat to hear from you all to see if there's things that have been working, things that have not been working. Please feel free to reach out to me again. You can always send a chat, drop it in the chat. There will be opportunities for comments as well, but just wanted to take the time to thank you and really make the plug. Please fill out the surveys. Or, if you have longer form comments or things like that, please reach out to me because we want to get some of this stuff done, but make sure that you all are a key part of that decision-making process. So I'm going to take a pause there to see if anybody has any thoughts or has any questions.
And at this time, we can also open it up for public comment as well. So apologies for having to repeat myself, but it's necessary. So we'll open it up to public comment. Please use the Q&A function on Zoom to indicate your interest to submit public comment. Please keep in mind, all public comments will be limited to 2 minutes. So while we're waiting for public comment, do any board members have any questions or comments? Robert Tagorda, I see your hand.
Thanks, Sydney. I just wanted to commend Shannon for collaborating with the rest of the team and moving this work forward. In many respects, what you just presented right now in terms of branding goes beyond marketing and engagement and communications. It's really helping us to synthesize what our core work is and conveying that to the public for accountability purposes. And I see the connection between the work that Sydney is doing and had presented an update on with the advisory boards, what Ryan presented with the data programs and the empathy interviews and the student experience audit. And now we're trying to convey that and communicate that in a consistent fashion as an organization. So in many respects, that's how I view the update that you just provided us with the branding. So thank you so much for it.
Thank you, Robert.
And Meredith Lee, I see your hand.
Yes, I'm a little biased as the volunteer board member to work most closely here with Shannon, but I do want to just say I appreciate the broad strategic thought that's going into the engagement here, not just, the logo, but really thinking about our mission and vision and how to get the diversity of audiences who might see this as their first touch point to Cradle to Career engaged and on the path to finding value in what we're providing. So thank you, Shannon. And all who contributed to the community conversations and initial iterations.
Yeah, I just want to second that because I think it's so important that we establish a presence and have this unified identity. And Shannon, you've just done a wonderful job of putting all those pieces together. Sometimes it's not so easy to translate something like data with an empathetic, emotive quality, but I think that through the different artifacts here that we've seen, the different products, we're starting to see all of that come together. So really appreciate the strategic thinking that you've put together here.
And just to highlight, in the chat, Gavin Payne said +1 to Robert's comments. Do we have any other board members that would like to share a question or comment? Okay, seeing none, and we don't have any request for public comment either. So Shannon, if you have any last words to close us out, go ahead.
No, thank you all again. I am always here. Once I hop off, once I stop sharing my screen, I will send my email in the chat again, but please feel free to reach out to me for any of your thoughts and feedback. I appreciate the words right now. It has been a journey, but it has been a journey that I feel like everybody's been a part of. Everybody's so excited to see this, take off and really get to the work. And I'm excited to be a part of it, but it's nice to see concrete elements really coming together. And it's just so nice to have that engagement with the board, with the community members, with just individuals at this level. And so I'm appreciative of that. I'm appreciative of your time and really just your passion for this all. I know that logos aren't the most exciting things sometimes, but it really does show what we're thinking, what we're trying to convey. And I think, that will really go a long way. And so it is a iterative piece, but it's the foundation and the basis of Cradle to Career as we really start to grow. So I thank you again and looking forward to seeing your survey results and really getting into the nitty gritty. So appreciate you all today and looking forward to what comes next.
Thank you so much, Shannon. All right, so the next item on our agenda for today is Executive Director Review, and we'll hear an update from Robert Tagorda.
Thank you, Amy. On behalf of the governing board members, Chris Fergielli, Meredith Lee, Sylvia Alva, and Gavin Payne, I'm grateful for the opportunity to provide this brief update on the Executive Director Review Ad Hoc Committee. We actually believe it's really important to share our recent progress and upcoming milestones for a couple of reasons. First, we're embarking on a process for the very first time with our very first executive director. So we want to make sure our entire organization is able to learn what works and what can be improved every step of the way. Second, we hope to bring open communication, transparency, and partnership to the review. At C2C, our aim is to be performance-oriented, supportive, and collaborative, and it should start with how we work alongside our leadership. So as a status update, we have actually convened the committee. We've integrated items from the work plan into the review forms and reviewed the final formatting for the review forms. We did that over the past couple months. We've also selected a total of 6 individuals who will provide a 360 review. Then later this week, we're going to be providing an orientation to those individuals so that they can be prepared to complete those forms. So next steps, as you could see at the bottom of this slide, this month, both the reviewers and our executive director will fill out review forms. Next month, I'll compile the individual review forms into a single feedback form and work with our governing board chair to develop a polished draft for the committee's review. Then after the holidays, the week of January 9, our ad hoc committee members will reconvene. We'll meet to revise the feedback and determine whether to recommend adjusting compensation. And then 2 weeks thereafter, committee members will meet with our executive director for the review. Then at our next governing board meeting in February, we'll hold a closed session to discuss the ED review and any salary recommendations. The bottom line is, if you recall from our very first meeting this year, we had laid out a timeline for this review process, and we're on track to complete the review process by the time we get together in February. So I commend and thank our ad hoc committee members, as well as those who will be completing the review form. And I'll conclude my update now and welcome any questions and comments from both the governing board as well as the public.
And so now, as Robert mentioned, we'll open it up for public comment on this item as well. So please use the Q&A function on Zoom to indicate your interest to submit public comment. You will have 2 minutes to provide public comment. And while we're waiting for any comments, we will open it up to board members for any questions or comments as well. Okay, last call. Any board members have any questions or comments about this review process? Okay, seeing none. We have not received any requests for public comment as well. So Robert, I'll turn it back to you.
Just want to thank the ad hoc committee members again for their continued commitment to this process. Also thank Mary Ann for being a part of this process in partnership with us, as well as the entire governing board for laying the foundation for the review process by establishing policy at the beginning of the year to allow us to proceed with this process for the very first time this year. Thank you, Sydney. Amy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Robert. So at this time, we are in Zoom world, Zoom land, and it can be fatiguing for everybody. So I really would encourage you all to get up during our 10-minute break, do stretch, grab, your favorite beverage of choice, maybe caffeinated, and we'll get ready for the next half of our meeting. So we'll be back here at 10:50. We'll see you back in a few minutes.
Okay, it is 10:50. Welcome back, board members. And just to let you know that recording is in progress. So Amy, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Sydney. We're ready to resume our meeting. Our next agenda item comes from Mary Ann Bates, who will be talking about collecting and sharing governing board demographic information. Mary Ann.
Thank you, Amy. So I wanted to give you an update on a request we received after the last board meeting with a fairly quick turnaround request. So earlier this year, the Campaign for College Opportunity contacted Cradle-to-Career because they were planning to update reports about diversity in California's educational leadership. So they requested that C2C share demographic information about C2C's leadership. To meet their deadline, because we wouldn't have been able to, convene our next board meeting and flag this for you for your input. To meet their deadline, we shared information just for the executive director and the 2 governing board chairs in their requested format. So I'm just sharing here the table. This is how they structured the table, and we're looking to receive information. So this is one example about how this kind of demographic information is sometimes requested by entities. So wanted to first make you aware of this request and let you know how we decided to respond given the timing. And then also was just curious to hear your thoughts on this and if there's a way you would like the office to support you. So next slide, please. And thinking about this, went back. There's a section in AB 132 that I thought was relevant, although it doesn't speak to the collection of demographic information at all. But just wanted to flag this in case it's helpful as reflections. So it's the intent of the legislature that in appointing members, the appointing authority shall make every effort to ensure the membership of the governing board is reflective of the cultural, racial, geographical, economic, and social diversity of California, taking into consideration factors including, but not limited to, diversity in data user experience, diversity in expertise with educational data, diversity in professional experience, and representation from different geographical and socioeconomic backgrounds. So there are no requirements that I'm aware of around, the sharing of demographic information. My understanding is that if a board or an entity wanted to, they could voluntarily share it. So next slide, please. The main reason we wanted to put this on the agenda is just to get your input, hear your thoughts. Wanted to make you aware of the request and hear your thoughts, especially given the expertise this board has on equity-related topics, and perhaps any insights you have about organizations being transparent about the demographic makeup of their leadership or those with decision-making authority. So I just wanted to provide this background, and I'm curious to hear the board's thoughts and whether you would like the office to assist you in any way on this. So over to Amy.
Yeah, I mean, for my thoughts on this is that, I think that it is reasonable for us to affirm the diversity of this board. And this is one way of us sort of living the narrative of diversity and equity and inclusion in our board member makeup. And so, it is voluntary. And I think that what I would like to do is to ask for input, but also to ask if there's maybe 1 or 2 volunteers from our board here who would like to work with the staff to develop some specifics, for example, what demographic information might we want to gather and how would we aggregate and share it? Do we have any interest in somebody stepping forward to help with that?
I see Sean Elo Rivera with his hand raised. Are you indicating interest to volunteer, Sean, or do you have a question?
No, I'm happy to help.
This is Tom with AICC. I'd be happy to help as well.
Great, thank you both. Londe?
Also happy to help.
All right, thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Sylvia.
So I understand the interest in this. I do think it's important to live our diversity and equity values, and the representation on this committee matters. What I would just ask is that when we submit demographic information, that it be done in the aggregate, and that we shouldn't identify individuals' personal demographic characteristics with the report. It should be in aggregated form. Also, we'll note that at least at the state level, we now in our applications with gender, we have male, female, and non-binary, and I didn't see that in that table.
Great feedback. Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing any further questions or hands. All right, and do we have public comment for this one as well, Sydney?
Yes, so at this time, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. If you would like to make public comment, please indicate your interest using the Q&A function on Zoom. Please keep in mind that your comments are limited to 2 minutes. So at this time, please submit your interest. And while we give folks a moment, do any board members have any other questions or comments?
So I think we have 3 volunteers altogether.
Correct.
That's great.
So far, I do not see any requests for public comments. So we'll go ahead and close this agenda item out.
Great, thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is documenting the P20W data system points. And so Robert and I will be facilitating this portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Amy. So this discussion will be about the process for documenting the addition of new data points to the P20W data set. As we began to develop definitions for the teacher training and retention dashboard, C2C data partners identified several additional data points that are not in the current list of P20W data points. So let's go through the roles and how they're involved with decisions around the data points.
Next slide, please.
Actually, let's go back to that. Let's go back to the previous one. You'll see a couple of examples there in kind of greater detail. So with the teacher dashboard, for example, it was prioritized in a 12-month work plan, but which would require data points not currently included in the P20W data set. And then with the data and tools advisory board, if it were to recommend additional data points, it would then task the office to do a feasibility study in collaboration with the data providers. So it helps contextualize the discussion that we're having as of this moment.
All right.
Next slide, yes. So then the work group discussed some safeguards for this process during the C2C planning process, and the document in our meeting material packet outlines the relevant sections of AB 132, the participation agreement, and the governance manual to lay out a foundation for the discussion that we're having today, so that we have a full understanding of the way that P20W system data points are currently documented.
All right, and just to go through the roles and how they interplay with this process, we have data providers who contribute to the P20 data system, at least annually, the data points that are in the P20W data set. So each provider has agreed to contribute to the data points under the terms of the participation agreement. The data providers have signed the participation agreement with a minimum list of data points included. And the participation agreement itself notes that we can include additional data elements without the need to re-execute the agreement, which is helpful. Next slide. The governing board. The governing board also has a role in this, of course. We can expand the P20W data set by requesting additional data points from data providers in the context of quality data with consideration for legal concerns, costs, and preserving the neutrality of the data system. So there is a caveat though, and that is that we shall not require a data provider to collect data that the data provider is not legally allowed to collect under applicable laws. And again, the governing board can add or remove requested data points based on changes in the usage of the elements without needing to re-execute the participation agreement. So it's structured in that way. Next slide, the advisory boards. When it comes to the advisory boards, the governing board does have the Data and Tools Advisory Board that is slated to help develop recommendations for which data points to include. And this, of course, is noted in the governance manual. The governance manual itself affirms that the governing board reviews recommendations for additional data as part of its strategic planning process. Recommendations for additional data require a feasibility study to be conducted by the office. The Office of Cradle-to-Career then works with the relevant data providers and experts to document data availability, reliability, and validity. So they'll look at legal requirements, any startup and ongoing costs to the office and to the data providers to make sure that that's taken into consideration. They look at potential approaches for collecting the information, and of course, any political or other implications that might jeopardize the neutrality of the office, as we all know that that is an important piece. So given this background, we know that we have the potential to add data elements, but we do not yet have a formal process for approving new data points. One specific example might be that teacher training and retention dashboard, but others will come up as we add data products to the services that are offered by the Cradle-to-Career data system. And it would be helpful to have a structured way of doing so. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we as a board have approved a 12-month work plan for the office. And within that, we need to consider that the work that the office needs to do. You know, a core deliverable is that teacher training and retention dashboard, and the questions that were identified during the planning process and then also discussed at our February board meeting would require some data points that are not yet in that P20W data set. And so we do need to assist the office to enable the creation of that dashboard. At the same time, we also need to consider the needs of the data providers. I think it's really important. In the work group had discussed some safeguards, and we need to get more specific about, and so we can be more intentional with building trust among the data providers. So at this point in time, we do have a choice on how to document the process by which the board is going to approve additional data points. So we can leverage our existing committee and task the governance manual committee to do this work, or we can create a new ad hoc committee specifically to document this process. So at this time, I'd like to open it up for a board discussion on the pros and cons of, creating a new separate ad hoc committee, or enabling the governance manual committee to take this on. Happy to hear your thoughts. How do we feel about this? Gavin?
So thank you, both of you, for sort of doing this process, and thank you to the office as well for being really conscientious and sort of thinking through the implications of what this might be. My own thinking around this would be just to enable the existing governance manual ad hoc committee to be the reviewer, only because it's the same sort of thing that we looked at and have discussed in a couple of occasions before. And since one of the governing documents that we're using in this process around data points is the governance manual, it seems logical to me that it's a good location for the activity to take place.
And just to note in the chat, Wanda Jose said +1, and Jerry Winkler said +1 as well to Gavin's comments. Oh, we're getting a lot of +1s. Marisol Linia did +1, Sujan Jez, and Sylvia Alba.
All right, we have a comment from Chris for you, Lily.
Hi, thank you for raising this this very important issue. And I think the fact that, we're already at the point where we're thinking about adding new data elements before we've even built any of the dashboards or products really shows how important this issue is. And I think, having participated in the planning process over the 2-year period or so, I think there was always an expectation that requests for new data elements would come from various stakeholders, from advisory boards, from C2C. But I don't think the planning process really anticipated data providers themselves being a source for recommendations for new data points. So I think it's really important to build that process out. I think the participation agreement, the governance manual, there's scaffolding in there already for how the advisory board would be the source of a recommendation. It would be vetted by the office and the board and the feasibility study and so on. I still think a lot of details need to be mapped out there as well, but the other source from data providers is kind of a new concept that I think we need to think more about. And, the first thought that comes to mind is that, we need a flow chart or a map of what are the origins of these requests, what bodies do they have to pass through for approval and vetting, what the criteria are all along the way. And I think most importantly, transparency of what the outcomes of all these processes are and why. So all stakeholders know exactly what's in the data set, how it got there and when, and also what was proposed and not approved and why that was. I think that's the most important thing here is we make all of this transparent. In terms of what bodies should do this, I think I lean a little bit more towards creating a separate committee, given how kind of focused this is on data points and kind of a deep dive into the criteria for how they would be vetted. But I could be convinced that the manual, the governance manual ad hoc committee could be a good mechanism as well.
Thank you, Chris. I think that you raised some good points here, and it is something that the work group I think wasn't quite as focused on, was having data providers step forward to bring in additional data points. I think one of the things that we want to think about is, can we come up with a good process that would allow for these data points to be efficiently added, and when it's needed for meaningful research questions and to develop an actual product. So it's known at this time that in order to create that teacher retention and training dashboard, that we do need some additional items. And in doing so, in creating this process, we want to make sure that we're not somehow creating an unmanageable or unsustainable stream of new data points, such that it's impeding our progress, right? Such that timely development and meaningful data products then becomes protracted and difficult. And so I'm personally of the opinion that it would be easy to streamline the process by having the governance manual committee take this on, because it does, the committee itself does have some operational flexibility to bring in additional expertise and to request additional information as needed. Other thoughts from the governing board members? Meredith.
Thanks, Amy. I would second what has been said. It seems like there's an opportunity to leverage some of the higher level discussions that the governance manual committee went through. And this is a very concrete use case example. I think it aligns with our spirit of a governance manual that's not set in stone, but that would evolve as we brought in input from, the range of expertise that would be needed to set a framework up now that would be sustainable and calibrate expectations for additional projects and pilots. So I would say with that caveat of making sure that we're bringing in the expertise for this specific first case, that the existing committee would make sense.
Noted. Thank you. Sylvia?
So both you and the next speaker really, I think, made a very important point, and that is that the ad hoc governance committee really needs to commit to ensuring broad consultation with people who have deeper expertise, as well as questions and concerns about this work, right? And if their work is really going to be sort of helping to guide this really critical issue, there has to be a commitment at the outset that they're engaging in ensuring that those various voices have been part of the decision-making process. So really appreciate what you and the next speaker both underscored. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. We have other thoughts or comments from board members? So I think at this time we can go ahead and invite public comment.
Yes, thank you. So at this time, we will open it up for public comment. Please use the Q&A function on Zoom to indicate your interest in submitting public comment. Please keep in mind that you will have 2 minutes to provide public comment. So at this time, please go ahead and submit your interest using the Q&A function. Okay, I do not see any requests for public comment.
Okay, so then I think that it is time to invite a motion. And I think the motion is to incorporate this work into the governance manual committee agenda for the year. Would anybody like to put forward a motion? We'll need to live edit this slide. Shannon?
Yes, I'm live editing.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
No worries. I am live editing right now, and apologies. Our Google Drive signs us out every so often. So as you can see, Shannon is as I'm live editing. No worries. Shannon and I got it. So I just want to confirm that the motion is to ask the Governance Manual Ad Hoc Committee to document the process by which the board approves additional data points to the P20W data set. And do I need to add for 1 year?
Yeah, we do have a couple of hands raised. So we'll go with Gavin first and then Londe.
I was just offering to make the motion, even though it's
thank you, Gavin. Would you help us clarify the motion, please?
as drafted on the screen.
Okay, thank you. Londe?
I was offering to second the motion as drafted on the screen.
So we have a motion that's been forwarded by Gavin and then seconded by Londe. So I believe now it's time to call for a roll call vote. So Sydney, will you help us with that?
Yes, so please bear with me, folks, because I will need to go one by one. So Gavin made the initial motion, Londe seconded.
Let me also, before we go into the roll call, just as a brief reminder for board members. So board members may vote yes. You may vote yes with reservations if you have concerns that you would like on the record. No if you do not approve, and then also abstain. So just as a reminder before we go into the voting process. Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay, thank you. And please, if I say your name incorrectly, please feel free to correct me. Thank you. So starting off with Sylvia Alva.
I support the motion.
Okay. Marisol Avina.
Yes.
Catalina Cifuentes.
Yes.
Debbie Cochran.
Yes.
David DeGear. I believe he is absent. Sean Elo Rivera.
Yes.
Christopher Guelli.
Yes.
Let's see, Michelle Reyes, who's the alternate for Senator John Laird.
Yes.
John Hetz.
I believe he stepped out.
Okay, so he has not returned. Okay. Assemblymember Jackie Irwin.
Yes.
Sujin Jez.
Yes.
Let's see. Meredith Lee.
Yes.
Gavin Payne.
Yes.
Patrick Perry.
Yes.
Javier Romero.
Yes.
Let's see. Is Elizabeth Stephenson on? She's the alternate for John Ohanian. No? Okay.
I don't see her.
Robert Tagorda.
Yes.
Tom Vu.
Yes.
Let's see, and Jerry Winkler.
Yes.
Okay, we have a unanimous yes vote with, yes, so we have an unanimous yes vote. Sorry, I was trying to read and talk at the same time. So the motion passes.
Okay, and I believe my count was, is that 17, correct?
Correct. We have
17 yeses?
yes.
Yes.
No,
My name was not called. but I'm a-
sorry, my
Oh,
apologies.
It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, Monday Jose is a yes.
Yes, and mine was also a yes, so that's 18, I think.
Okay. Thank you so much. My apologies. That's what happens when you copy and paste things. Thank you.
All right, and we had 2 abstentions with that. So with that, the motion passes and we are able to move forward with having the governance manual committee move forward with this as part of its agenda for the year. All right. So the next item on the agenda for today is the governance manual ad hoc committee itself. So this was in your packets, and one of the things that our governance manual notes is that this standing governance manual ad hoc committee can bring forward changes to the governance manual each year. The list of topics that have been identified to date are included in that charter, and that is part of your board packet. The topics for 2023 include providing more specificity on the process for selecting advisory board members, moving the time frame for electing the incoming board chair to August, and this would allow for appointments to happen first. Usually that happens towards the end of the fiscal year, just right as at the beginning. And then reviewing and integrating recommendations from the proposed advisory board governance manual edits ad hoc committee. So integrating those changes into the governance manual. Our current members include Jerry Winkler, Chris Verdioli, Robert Segorda, and Meredith Lee, and the committee is chaired by Gavin Payne. So the chair retains that operational flexibility in amending the membership or requesting additional information and expertise from external stakeholders. So if you'd like to be added, you can always let Gavin Payne know. So at this time, I'd like to see if our board members have comment on this, and then we will also invite public comment as well. Then we can invite a motion if there's no comment here. I'm not seeing any from board members. And do we have any interest in public comment, Sydney?
So at this time, we'll open it up for public comment. Please use the Q&A function to indicate your interest. And please keep in mind, you will have 2 minutes to provide public comment. So we will open it up at this time. I don't see any requests for public comment.
Okay. All right, then. I guess we're ready to request a motion. I'd like to invite a motion to renew the governance ad hoc committee for a 1-year term to make the 2023 updates to the governance manual. Do I have anyone who would like to support that motion as a first?
So moved. This is Sean Rivera.
Thank you. I have a first from Sean Rivera. Do I have a second? From Sylvia Alva?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And now it's time to go ahead and do that roll call vote, and Sydney will help us with that again. Once again, board members can vote yes with reservations if they have concerns that they'd like on the record. No, if they do not approve or abstain. Sydney?
Okay, thank you so much. Sylvia Alva?
Yes.
Landia Jose?
Yes.
Marisol Lavinia?
Yes.
Catalina Cifuentes?
Yes.
Debbie Cochran?
Yes.
David DeGear, I believe he's absent. Sean Elo Rivera?
Yes.
Amy Fong?
Yes.
Chris Verdioli?
Yes.
Michelle Reyes, the alternate for Senator John Laird? Michelle Reyes. Okay. John Hetz. I believe he's still.
Sorry, we had his constituent call I was dealing with. Can you repeat? Sorry about that.
No worries. So this is to vote on the motion to renew the governance manual ad hoc committee for a 1-year term to make the 2023 updates to the governance manual.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Assembly Member Jackie Irwin.
Yes.
Sujin Jez.
Yes.
Meredith Lee.
Yes.
Gavin Payne.
Yes.
Patrick Perry.
Yes.
Javier Romero.
Yes.
Elizabeth Stephenson, the alternate for John Ohanian. I believe she is absent, as is the board member John Ohanian. Robert Tagorda.
Yes.
Tom Vu.
Yes.
And Jerry Winkler.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, that's a yes. So it looks like we have a unanimous yes with 3 board members absent.
All right, with that, then the motion passes. Thank you very much. For your vote. So we've actually reached the last agenda item a little bit early today. So what I do want to go ahead and thank Lisa and Paige for your earlier reports on the work of the advisory boards. Thank you also to Marianne and Sydney and Ryan and Shannon, who've all made your presence felt with your achievements in just these short 2.5 months. And then Robert, also for your reports today. Really appreciate hearing about the work of the office and just the work these past few months, and indeed seeing the words from the planning work group and the legislation really starting to come to life as we create the Cradle-to-Career data system and bringing forward these wonderful data products to the public and for stakeholders to use. So as I mentioned, we've reached the end of our scheduled agenda items. And as a reminder, the February board meeting will be in person in Sacramento, so we can account for the so we can accommodate the closed session for the executive director review. Thank you once again for participating and staying involved to help us make progress on this creation of this ambitious data system. Thanks for helping to make an impact, and we'll see you again soon. If there are no objections, and seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all very much.